Hadith number 30. Yeah, that's fine. No, that's it. That's the hadith for one. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن سار على سبيله إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. So today inshallah ta'ala we'll be continuing discussing the book Arba'in an-Nawawiyya, and this is this famous collection that have been put together by two who mentioned that regarding Arba'in, that two of the ulama put this together, not just an-Nawawi. Who recall?
Ibn Rajab?
La, they say Ibn Rajab. So two of the ulama put this particular collection together for what they refer to as Arba'in an-Nawawiyya. But it's actually the work effort of two. Nawawi being one, so that's giveaway. Who was the other? So I mentioned, so this particular work, that Arba'in an-Nawawi, that the one who started this effort was Ibn Salah. So Ibn Salah rahimahullah, one of the ulama, that also books in Hadith and also in Mustalah, that he had like, he said that majlis, he had this majlis that he would have, and he mentioned this Hadith. Then he didn't complete it, so he reached about 20 something Hadith. Then he passed away rahimahullah ta'ala, and then he, and then now rahimahullah kind of someone picked up and made it what is referred to as Arba'in an-Nawawi. So they mentioned that today on my Instagram, they call it, or one of those platforms. So I have one that has some, that they found a masjid in Syria that I call concerned. This masjid is a masjid, but what they have, this masjid was what they call Dar al-Hadith, and this was like in the 6th century, where the people like Ibn Salah, Nawawi actually taught in this masjid, and it was called Dar al-Hadith. So that's how the place is still there today. So they're making, they record someone doing a lesson in this place. But this was, they said, now also now rahimullah, that Arba'in was like written inside this masjid.
Oh, okay.
So it is still, this masjid still functioning in Syria today. So that's concerned with something historical regarding, as mentioned, that Ibn Salah and other of the ulama who taught in that masjid. But that masjid was considered to be like they call it now Dar al-Hadith, or Dar al-Hadith al-Shamiyya. So overall concerning, so said not that this Arba'in somewhat well known, and today inshallah ta'ala we'll be picking up from where we had stopped, and we started discussing Hadith at-Thalathun. So we're discussing the 30th Hadith in this series, and as we know that at times that most of the majalis they are more than one. Most of the majalis that they are more than one. So the system that we follow, we mention the Hadith. So today we'll start mention the Hadith, and then we start to discuss matter pertaining to the Hadith. Matters pertaining to the Hadith will include matter relating to takhrij of the Hadith, the hukm upon the Hadith based upon the mention by the ulama. Then we'll discuss concerning something regarding tarjuma of the Sahabi that is mentioned. Then also we'll discuss the fawahid and the benefit of the Hadith. So different things that are mentioned regarding discussing this particular series. So today we'll start to mention the Hadith again, and then we'll just pick up from there. Bi'awnillahi subhanahu wa ta'ala. Tafaddal.
بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله عن أبي ثعلبة الخشاني جرثوم بن الناشر رضي الله تعالى عنه عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم إن الله تعالى فرض فرائض فلا تضيعوها وحد حدودا فلا تعتدوها وحرم أشياء فلا تنتهكوها وسكت عن أشياء رحمة لكم غير نسيان فلا تبحثوا عنها حديث حسن رواه الدارقطني وغيره. On the authority of Abu Tha'laba al-Khushani Jurthum ibn Nashirin radiallahu anhu, on the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, that he said, Allah the Exalted prescribed religious duties, so do not neglect them. He set boundaries, so do not surpass them. He has prohibited some things, so do not violate them. He remains silent about some things as a mercy for you and not due to forgetfulness, so do not search for them. Hadith Hasan, related by Ad-Daraqutni and others.
Since the hadith is mentioned as hadith number 30th in this series by An-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, so the first that we have discussed, that the Sahabi, so I think in the last lesson we have mentioned regarding Tarjuma, something relating to this particular Sahabi, who is, as he mentioned, Abi Tha'laba al-Khushani. So we have discussed about the Sahabi regarding something related to him. Then, so we don't need to repeat all that information again. That's the case, huh, Abdul Malik?
Yeah.
So the next thing that we'll discuss is regarding takhrij of the hadith. So after discussing, so we mentioned the Sahabi at times, that so as that An-Nawawi rahimahullah, as is his practice in Arba'in, that whenever he mentioned a Sahabi for the first time, he'll mention what? His full name. Now I mention his name, so we have a general idea of the Sahabi by way of his name, and that's the pattern that he follows. He follows similar pattern in his book, Riyadus Salihin, that whenever mentioned a Sahabi for the first time, he'll mention like his full name, so at least we are acquainted with those Sahaba. Then the next matter, so the matter is to discuss something about the Sahaba. The next matter that we'll cover is matter relating to takhrij. So takhrij, ilmu takhrij, is that relates to the science of hadith. I would say that's not the very important matter regarding ilmu hadith. So with this, we have takhrij, which is somewhat in a simplified manner, that we have mentioned the hadith by way of first, or the sources of this hadith, so what are the reference source of this hadith. The author here, An-Nawawi rahimahullah, mentioned hadithun hasanun rawahu Daraqutni wa ghayru. So the hadith is mentioned that this hadith is collected by Ad-Daraqutni. Then he mentioned wa ghayru and others. So we understand that there's Daraqutni, the hadith is collected by Imam Ad-Daraqutni, but also others. Then regarding concerning that takhrij of the hadith, which is giving some reference to the hadith, the source of the hadith, that of the book, that's something that we refer to is this is the Hashia of Busiri. So Busiri rahimahullah ta'ala, when he mentioned the hadith, he mentioned that, or they mentioned the hadith in the Ad-Daraqutni, and also they mentioned Al-Hakim. So Al-Hakim in his book Al-Mustadrak also collect this hadith. So that's a very simple source regarding the hadith. So you find that also regarding takhrij, mentioned in the source of hadith, that of those who may involve in this, sometimes they may vary. Some who goes in detail, and some that mention the more renowned sources. So they have mentioned here regarding concerning a book, another book that we have, that this book, it goes into takhrij of the hadith, which goes into detail. So he mentioned that, one, he mentioned hadithun, he mentioned akhrajahu, the hadith, the sources of this hadith. He mentioned Daraqutni fi Sunan, Bayhaqi fi Sunan al-Kubra, Khatib al-Baghdadi in his book Al-Faqih wa Mutafaqqih. Then also Al-Hakim in his book Al-Mustadrak, Ibn Battah al-Uqbari in his book Al-Ibana, and the book of Ibana, so that, and others, Ibn Jawzi in his book called Dhimb al-Hawa, that and also Ibn Nu'aym in his book Al-Hilya, and others. So of those books that he mentioned Daraqutni, known, even though said Daraqutni known, that the book of Daraqutni rahimahullah is one of a collection of hadith, as we'll discuss, but even concerning the works of Daraqutni is somewhat known, but more so people of hadith. You might find a person who's a faqih that may not be, he may know of Daraqutni, but don't know of Daraqutni. Meaning, he may know the name Daraqutni, but doesn't have detail as to the works of Daraqutni and the importance of the work of Daraqutni. But he may know of, yes, there's a person called Imam, called Daraqutni, maybe specialized in hadith, but as for the detail of who Daraqutni is and his works, he may not be that familiar with those information. Also, he mentioned Bayhaqi in his book As-Sunan al-Kubra, Khatib al-Baghdadi, and Khatib al-Baghdadi is a book about concerning that adab and of identifying the ulama and matters of that nature. It's a book regarding concerning the importance of and the adab of talib al-ilm. The book on that topic. Then he mentioned Al-Hakim in his book Al-Mustadrak, Ibn Battah al-Uqbari in his book Al-Ibana. The book of Al-Hakim Mustadrak is a book of hadith, as well known by most. The book of Ibn Battah al-Uqbari in his book Al-Ibana. Ibn Battah al-Uqbari, his book is called Al-Ibana. That book of Ibn Battah is a book in, guess which topic? Which topic? Al-Ibana. Ibn Battah. Hadith. It's a book in Aqidah. It's a book in Aqidah. So you have Ibn Battah al-Uqbari, you have several books in Aqidah. So you have, they call Ibana al-Kubra wa Sugra. Ibana al-Kubra wa Sugra. So you have the larger Ibana, and also you have like a condensed book that is called a Sugra. Both are somewhat in print. The Sugra is in print and even been translated. Nam, and then al-Kubra, then that one goes in many volumes. A portion of it has been published. Nam, and Sheikh, some of my Sheikh who have worked on that, sometime I visit the country. So, but generally concerned, that book is not per se a book in Hadith as we say, but the book of Ibn Battah, a book in Hadith by way of when he wrote this book, he also wrote that book when he mentioned things regarding Aqidah, even though on the topic of Aqidah, he mentioned with Isnad. So said those books that he mentioned, he will book that all these books on whatever topic that they are, that when the author mentioned anything, it will come with a full Isnad. So they're called concerning al-Masadir al-Asliya. So according to the ulama of Hadith, it will refer to as Qutub Masadir al-Asliya, meaning books that come with Isnad, in a nutshell. And that was the practice of the ulama of old. That whenever I wrote a book, then they usually write that book with that Isnad. Whether that book is a book in Hadith, or for example, a book in Fiqh by Ibn Hazm. He write with Isnad, the narration. So even so the early books, even in Fiqh, in Hadith, in Aqidah, in Adab wal Akhlaq, Adab al Talib al Ilm, that those books of the general practice was that it will be written with an Isnad. So they call those Kutub al-Asliya because the author mentioned is Isnad going back to the person that the Hadith ends with. So as concerning that matter, I would have mentioned that the main source that he mentioned here, Ad-Daraqutni, that I think we didn't mention this, but we'll add this, that regarding concerning Ad-Daraqutni, a person to be known. So Ad-Daraqutni rahimahullah ta'ala, that his name is Ali ibn Omar ibn Ahmed ibn Mahdi ibn Mas'ud ibn Nu'man. But for writing sake, you can write that right is maybe the first is said now that Ali ibn Omar ibn Ahmed, and that's sufficient. Ad-Daraqutni. So Ahmed, so sorry, Ali ibn Omar ibn Ahmed. We can add ibn Mahdi, ibn Mas'ud, ibn Nu'man, ibn Dinar, ibn Abdullah al-Baghdadi ad-Daraqutni. That's like his full name. But for as for what a person may need to know, maybe the first three names. Ali ibn Umar, ibn Ahmed, al-Daraqutni or Baghdadi. So he's more renowned, and his kunya that Abu al-Hasan. His kunya Abu al-Hasan. But he's given that the titles concerning his level of knowledge or his status regarding the ulama, Daraqutni rahimahullah ta'ala, that he's given that the titles concerning that he's said to be Al-Hafid al-Kabir. Concerning of the ulama, and as we'll mention, he's considered to be, and also is a muhaddith, a muqri, a person also specialized in qira, lugha, nahu, wal adib. So he can somewhat have all those science, I said, under his belt. So somewhat have mastered all those science, aqari, muhaddith, lughawi, nahwi, and also adib. So Daraqutni rahimahullah ta'ala is known to have of those that have various science that he has mastered, and that he born that he died, that he mentioned that he was born 306 al-Hijri, and he died 385. Birth the year 306 al-Hijri, and died 385 Hijri. That it is mentioned by some of the ulama, they mention Qadi Abu Tayyib al-Tabari قال كان دارقطني أمير المؤمنين في الحديث. That the ulama mentioned to him that he has this title that is called Amir al-Mu'mineen fil Hadith. So that's one of the great titles that is given to ulama of Hadith. So you find the likes of Al-Bukhari have those titles. So you find that Daraqutni of those that they include amongst those who could be given this title of being Amir al-Mu'mineen fil Hadith. That Daraqutni rahimahullah ta'ala, that they mention mathabahu, that is Shafi'i. He's Shafi, mathab, concerning ahkam al-fiqhiyya, and I've written a book like that also of his more renowned work, of his more, he have many works in hadith. Allah, he have many works that he have, many books that he have authored. Of those books that he mentioned, the book here that comes to note as Sunan, so that book as Sunan ad-Daraqutni, that one of his more renowned books or known books is a book regarding a hadith al-ahkam. But also he discussed the illah of hadith. I will discuss this matter concerning illah al-hadith. He will discuss other detailed matter regarding hadith even in that book. Of his other works that he has, Daraqutni rahimahullah ta'ala, he has a book that is called Al-Ilal Al-Warida fi Ahadith An-Nabawiyya. Al-Ilal Al-Warida fi Ahadith An-Nabawiyya. You have several prints of that book, but that book, they said, is a masterpiece. That book is a masterpiece. But that book is of those books that want to benefit from it, you must be strong in ilm al-hadith. It's of those works that if you are not a master and strong in ilm al-hadith, then that book will not be of much benefit. It's only for specialists. It's only a book for people who are specialists, and in particular, ilm al-hadith. And to read the book, so from this book that they mentioned that is a masterpiece, and one of the main book in the science of al-ilal, which ilal al-hadith that I mentioned that it is ilal al-hadith here asbab ghamida or khafi yusqut sahhat al-hadith or yat'an fi sahhat al-hadith, that these are asbab, that these are ways that are khafi, that are hidden defects in the hadith that will bring about the hadith of being graded as being rejected. So these are not, so they said that this is there's asbab al-ghamid al-khafi, that these are factors or things that are, somebody said khafi, that are hidden, not that apparent, even though the hadith seems to be sahih. So from the apparent look at the hadith, it seems to be okay, but the ilal is something which is hidden, and it requires a special skill and approach to detect these hidden defects. That's ilm al-ilal. So he has a book on that topic. So this book, we said it's in print, some print about 10 volumes, other just over 10 volumes. That book is like a masterpiece on that science. It's a masterpiece and a main reference, amongst all the main reference in that science of ilm al-ilal. Ilm al-ilal, that was said, so is of those who have mastered that science. And that's a handful of the ulama of hadith. So ilm al-ilal is of those more intricate aspect of ilm al-hadith that many who specialize in that field does not master that field. Only a handful is one of them. Ad-Daraqutni rahimahullah ta'ala. And also Daraqutni rahimahullah, you have other books. That he has a book, to show that you know that also, we said no, that he has books, get another book that is also well renowned. And he has a book that is called, the book is called, he has that Ilzamat wa Tatabbu. Ilzamat wa Tatabbu, which is two books that he discuss. Tatabbu, he discuss a hadith that he criticized certain hadith in Bukhari and Muslim. He's of those who criticize hadith in Bukhari. So Daraqutni rahimahullah have a book about some of the criticism of the hadith in Sahihain. So he's of those kind of somewhat, because of his knowledge, then he have looked into that matter regarding critiquing some hadith in Sahih Bukhari. And that book is in print. Guess who did the tahqiq of that book? A Shafi scholar? And said that, so there's a university thesis in Medina in particular.
Sheikh Muqbil.
Sheikh Muqbil, aywa. So Sheikh Muqbil rahimahullah, as his, so you have his master's thesis, or Sheikh Muqbil rahimahullah, that eventually came to Medina University and was a student there. So of his master's thesis that he was doing then, but he didn't went on to he had to leave before he could do his PhD. So his master's thesis on this topic, he did this book as his master's thesis. So it's like it's called tahqiq. So like a student of the thing that a book that is already, let's say a book that is makhtut, that was said a manuscript that is there, that as your PhD thesis, or it could be your, said your doctorate thesis or your master's thesis, then you can edit or check a book that is already, that is a manuscript. So Sheikh Muqbil say, find in Medina University and like in Saudi and other places, that they do a lot of these checking. So books that are old books of the scholars, they want to make them of books that are contemporary. We have access to those books. They go and they will check them and then print them in modern prints. So Sheikh Muqbil rahimahullah, that was his thesis. That he did a check-in, ta'qiq of the book, Ilzamat al-Tabba by Ad-Daraqutni rahimahullah ta'ala. And also you have other books. So that one, but he shows regarding that, and that's concerning Ilm al-Ilal. To check Bukhari, Ilm al-Ilal, a part of that topic. Also of his other works that he has, you have a Hadith al-Nazul. So also you have written a Hadith or get a Hadith regarding al-Nazul of subhanahu wa ta'ala. Also a Hadith al-Ru'ya regarding seeing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Akhirah. Also he has book al-Afrad that also, it's now portion of it is in print. So Imam Daraqutni rahimahullah somewhat is known to be of those scholars that in the field of hadith is of those that is a specialist in this field without challenge. And somewhat I've gone discuss some of the more intricate matters of ilm al-hadith. So I said that concerns ilm al-ilal today. So I said hadith to be authentic. So I said no, that ilm al-ilal hadith is of those field that I said the more intricate of the science of hadith. And as we said, not many. In today's time, you find out that's the area you find that those who stand out in ilm al-hadith is because somewhat they have entered in that arena. The ones today who stand out in ilm al-hadith are those people who are able can speak well on this topic and write on this topic. So that now become the area now where people are exploring. I would say some maybe you have those who are able and those who are, those who do a good job and those who don't. Like in everything, you find those who do a good job and those who do not. But overall concern that in the field of hadith today, that you find that that this area now become more being discussed compared to before. More being discussed today than years before. So because of this sign, I've said use the word, and that is my term, not that somewhat, you said not revival, but more investigation and research in this topic, that you find that a person yesterday might have certain views in hadith and they change them because of what have been discovered regarding this area of ilm or entering the science, the area of ilm al-ilal. And for a person to master this, he has to be able to have good knowledge of ilm al-mustalah and also the method of how to study hadith properly. So that's concerning that particular discussion. Then we have discussed the hadith regarding what have been said by the ulama of those who authenticate the hadith, and a discussion between the ulama, which is the hadith marfu or the hadith is what? Mawquf. That was the case?
No.
So you have a discussion regarding the ulama on that topic. You have a discussion on the ulama on that topic. So you find that Ibn Rajab rahimahullah can somewhat highlight some of the criticism of the hadith. So sometimes I mention the criticism of the hadith or what have been some of the things that have been put forward against the hadith. But overall, that the hadith is under discussion between the ulama. So that's concerning Ibn Rajab, as we added that matter. Next thing we'll mention regarding this particular hadith is Hamiyat Hada Hadith or Makanat Hada Hadith. What's the position of the ulama have taken regarding what they have said regarding this hadith? Just by way of takhrij, that this particular book, Adwa Samawiyya fi Takhrij al-Hadith al-Arba'in Nawawiyya, that he mentioned this hadith also that it has shawa'id. So you have this narration which is under discussion, but also there's other narration of this hadith And you have some again, so you have other shawahid of the hadith. So I mentioned that, and now rahimullah, based upon what he mentioned, the hadith is hasan, meaning that the hadith may have weakness, but with the other shawahid wa mutaba'at, that they see that all go together, give some strength to the hadith. But, so yeah, as for what has been mentioned regarding this particular hadith, that the hadith, as mentioned by Ibn Rajab rahimahullah ta'ala, and mentioned by Ibn Sam'ani, قال هذا حديث أصل كبير من أصول الدين. That is hadith, this particular hadith of Abi Tha'laba, that is هذا hadith, يعني this hadith أصل كبير. It's of a hadith of great importance, or it's a asl regarding the usul of the deen. So the hadith can somewhat go to very important matters regarding the usul of this deen. And they mention usul al-deen, the ulama of past, when I mention usul al-deen, it includes aqidah and aqaid and ahkam. At times it will include masahil of ahkam, halal al-haram, and also ahkam al-aqadiyah, or masail al-aqadiyah. So usul al-deen at times include matters that relates to aqidah and matters that relates to ahkam al-shar'iyyah. Also they state regarding this particular hadith, that I mentioned that التوفي قال تضمن هذا حديث قواعد الشر. That is hadith, it includes قواعد الشر, principles of the Sharia. لأن الحكم الشرعي في نفس الأمر إما مسكوت, as I mentioned that, as for the judgment or the judgment of the Sharia ruling on a matter, either that matter is something which is that we are commanded to fulfill it, وإما مسكوت عنه, or matters that regarding the hukm shari, it is مسكوت Sharia is somewhat silent on the matter, or متكلم به, or something which is spoken of. So then I mention وهو إما, or something that been spoken of by way of either we have been إما منعا, either something also is something that been forbidden, or mahmur bi, or something that we have been commanded, instructing to fulfill. Had, zajir, and manhi an, and also things that are things that we have been instructed to avoid. So that's concerning a sharia, as well mentioned. So they have mentioned regarding concerning that this particular hadith, that again they mention this hadith that covers, as mentioned, thing which is fara'id, that is upon us, thing which is halal, and also things that are haram, and thing which is maskut an. And that's the area concerned, that's that area that you find that the ulama of usul al-fiqh, that they'll dwell in that area. Ulama of usul al-fiqh, that they will dwell in that area regarding what is said to be, what are the principles and guidelines regarding what is deemed to be fara'id, what are things that can be classed as being fard, what are those things which is wajib, what are those things that can be classed as mandub or mustahab or masnoon, also those things that are said to be mubah, and those things that are said to be classed as haram or makruh. What are the principles to decide that something is said to be haram? What's the guidelines to be followed to say something it is wajib or mandub? So there's rules regarding these things. There's rules regarding these things. And next matter, before going to that matter, that we'll find also with the fuqaha and the ulama in general, that there are certain points or certain masahil, just as this hadith, mutakallim fi. Those who say the hadith maybe lean toward the hadith being hasan, and those that may lean to the hadith being what? Daif. And you might find that occurs. And in certain masail al-fiqhiyah of the ulama say this matter is such halal, and those who might say the hadith is that this matter is haram. At times you might find a discussion between the ulama. Nam, so and these matters may be classed as masail ijtihadiyah. Masail ijtihadiyah. So things that ulama may have, the alim is put forth in his ijtihad. Alim fulan, that in those matters, al-masail ijtihadiyah is one to look at, is this alim qualified to make ijtihad? Is this alim qualified to make ijtihad? and that alim who's qualified to make ijtihad to understand that he's not pulling things from his pocket, pulling things from nowhere, that he's working with something. Then the thing to know whether he's correct or incorrect is to look to see if he's using qiyas, or we differ, or there's a difference regarding the hadith being authentic or not, to measure who's correct and who's incorrect. How? If it's a hadith matter, is to know what is considered a hadith, when is a hadith considered to be what? Sahih. Then you can judge whether it's correct or not. With me? So there's a way to judge and to measure the ijtihad of an alim. And the way to do so is going back to that science to see if the matter of, to say the hadith is authentic or not, what's the final judgment of hadith, is to say, okay, did this hadith comply with the criteria of hadith being authentic? And is his judgment actually correct? Did the hadith according to him, so we can see, okay, if he said a hadith, it could tick all the box of authenticity, is that the case? And to see what are the points that he has put forward to come to the conclusion the hadith is authentic. Clear? So that's how you measure an alim. And if he says something and says that concerning an alim regarding a judgment on a hadith, so first, is that person qualified of that caliber of ilm in that field for him to be able to pass a judgment, an independent judgment? Have you reached that level of that level? So I said, if it's a matter regarding fiqh, it's the same thing. It's a matter regarding fiqh that for alim to make ijtihad on a matter to see if he's using qiyas, what are the rules of qiyas? To say the alim is right or wrong, what's the rule of qiyas? And to see, did he comply with the rule of qiyas accordingly? If he complied and he said, okay, he's on point, he has something to work with. If he does not comply with the rule of qiyas fully, then maybe he has made that indicates that he may have made an error. There's something that is off, even the qiyas that he's making. Clear? So we judge the ulama by the principles that have already been set, not based upon, you understand, people that's pulling things from here and there. So that's concerning working with what already been established. So work with established rules to see, did that alim comply with the rules and fulfill whatever criteria that is laid down regarding what's being discussed, the point that's being discussed. And that doesn't mean that you disrespect the alim. It means that you're just at time critiquing what the alim have said and putting question to what being put forward, what is being given. So that's concerning those matters. So you might find that between the ulama of hadith, at times you might have ikhtilaf, and that's based upon that alim in his research, in his conclusion, that he believes the hadith that he have grades such and such, it comply with the ruling or comply with the criteria that have been set. So we judge him by that criteria. We judge him by that criteria, and that judgment come by people who are his peers. Judged by the people who are his peers. And as for the hadith, as for what the hadith can be taken from this hadith, that they mention concerning the hadith, one of what the hadith can somewhat encourage from this particular hadith, it mentioned regarding that they think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or the Sharia ought to be fara'id or / wajib. So fara'id, according to the hadith, mentioned that this thing which is fara'id, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made fara'id, that He has made certain thing which is compulsory upon us, that we should comply with those things, meaning we should carry out those things accordingly and not be complacent regarding those matters, and that we should not become complacent and negligent regarding those matters by not fulfilling them accordingly. Then also it mentioned that that, 'cause, 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 ' that there's things that are there's hudud, that there's boundaries that we should not cross. So there's boundaries that we should not cross. And also a thing which is haram, that we should not fall into, and that there's things that is maskut and that there's things that somewhat, that the Sharia has somewhat been silent on those matters. So there's things that may be silent on those matters. And I mentioned that it's a rahmah lakum, it's a mercy upon you, so not to overly delve in those matters. Not to overly delve in those matters. So it means that you might find that sometimes a person that they want to be, I want to follow the sunnah. But in certain matters that they may ask that there is something which is maybe the Sharia been silent on the matter, but you're asking things that you're pushing it to make things even difficult upon yourself. Nam, so at times the Sharia give us certain ease, just take to that ease. Don't overstretch it. Don't put burden on yourself. Because the Sharia can sometimes give a general ruling, leave it at general. Don't try to be too specific. They make things very narrow for yourself. Make it narrow for yourself. So they mentioned that sakata an ashya, things that have been silent upon those things, leave them as they are. And don't make it more difficult. Rahmatan lakum, as a mercy to yourselves. Nam, ghayru nisyan, not out of forgetfulness. So don't make things difficult. That's the point. Don't make things what? Difficult. فَلَا تَبْحَثُوا عَنْهَا, that you should not per se overly investigate in those matters. Don't overly investigate those matters. And that is, you'll find that where people go into hulu, where people go to excessiveness. Nam, where they start to apply things and take things out of context. So, examples. Now, okay, since you volunteer, give what?
The hadith about the best sadaqah is to give water.
Okay.
But on a cold and freezing day, would that be the best thing to do?
That's a question then you're asking.
Question and
No,
example.
no, sir. When I said,
Example.
no, I said, okay. When I said that, what I said when you example, in the sense of that to make things more visual to us and give practical examples. And I understand, so can you imagine the matter? So you have thing which is, as I mentioned, fara'id. That thing is wajib, salat, siyam. Those things which is wajib, even though in the thing which is halal, they have also fallen in different brackets or different categories, anwa. So you might have thing which is halal, which is fara'id, is halal. But you have thing which is fara'id, thing that we're supposed to comply with. Some of those things which is wajib. You must do it. And thing which is, we should do those things, but is it wajib? Having a beard. Is having a beard wajib?
No.
You said no.
No.
Oh, you said nam. Nam. So, is it wajib? To grow a beard.
Yeah.
You understand? So, that for some people might say, you say nam, yes. And the person said, no, it's not wajib. You with me? So something else is under discussion. So, is to see, okay, is there even a discussion about, and to understand, okay, regarding, for example, the beard, the matter regarding the beard, is having a beard wajib or not? To see what the ulama say about this matter. And what's their evidence? And what's the mahal niza, and what matter there's a discussion on regarding the beard. Clear?
No.
So you might have a discussion, but you might have a discussion, but to know on what point are they discussing? The discussion is on what point? Because you may have a discussion about a point that is not there. There's no difference on that matter. So regarding having a beard, we said having a beard or not having a beard. Is it mean having a beard, I must have my beard, leave it and let it grow as it is, and I cannot touch it at all? Is that meant by having a beard? Or having a beard, what is meant is, I have a beard that my beard comes with a beard of a person that comes down to his belly button. Nam, is that person allowed to touch that beard. Like most of us have, Caribbean beard at most part. It's a Caribbean beard and African beard, isn't it? That in sometimes they're not like go down to your belly. In most part, you have some are does. What's it like us present that okay, so a person with a beard that goes down to his stomach. Is he allowed, not allowed to touch this? You understand? So, and if he's allowed, what is it? If you say as a person, he's allowed to touch off it. What off it? You with me? No. So you have a person, they go to the barber and they say they want a number 2, a number 3, and they have and they give a number 2. You understand? What does having a beard actually means? So that's, you understand? So there's no, the ulama discuss that matter. What of those, all those points, what's the area that they actually discuss? You with me? Can you find that now somewhere have the belief that okay, having a beard, is it, you understand? What do they actually mean when they have this discussion? Because sometimes a person may research a matter, but he's not clear, he's confused, not knowing where's they said mahal al-niza, the point that they actually have a discussion on. Where he's just discussing a point where, the point that you're discussing, not the point where there's a difference between the ulama. And the point that they have a difference on, you take that to be the point, you take it outside its context. And you're applying to something else. You with me? So that's those matters. So I said, a matter that considered to be even fara'id, sometimes these things that are clear, and something that it's maybe under discussion. Some say it is wajib, and some say it maybe not. But is to do the research on those matters. Second, the matter they discussed of wajib, that so wajib went to different categories. I would say that will be discussed in the book of the fuqaha and the books of usul al-fiqh. They'll go through those differences. Different level of saying something is that something which is allowed at times, that thing that is allowed, it is wajib, fard. Time something is upon us, but may be considered to be mandub, mustahab. They may call it fadila. At times, maybe something upon us, but it's something which is mubah. So it's knowing how to apply each of those in their right places. How to apply each of those in their right place. Because if a person don't, he may bring confusion upon himself and others. And something you find a discussion, sometimes even online, that sometimes that you find certain heated discussion, but the person doesn't understand the extent of the matter that's being discussed, and applying things maybe in its wrong order and place. So then he mentioned that so the hadith, encouraging the hadith is encouraged regarding those who were said to be fara'id, that we try to uphold those things and fulfill those things accordingly. And also you have those things which is said to be maskut an, where not to, or thing which is forbidden, that are hudud that are set, regarding that there is boundaries that we should not cross, regarding, as we discussed concerning hudud, that all of fiqh we discussed concerning about babul hudud, boundary regarding things that if you cross those boundaries, then it comes with a penalty. There's things that in Islam, that if you cross certain boundaries, it comes with penalty, regardless about your intention. And you might have a discussion, you understand, or so your intention, it doesn't count, that between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What the Sharia, as for what can be judged, is the act. And you have crossed that boundary. And that crossing that boundary, it comes with a penalty. So from the fact that if you have crossed the boundary, then the penalty is applied. Whether it's said to be righteous or unrighteous. Whether you say the intention was this or that, that's the next matter. But as for the fact that you have crossed the boundaries and you're in front of the judge, then he has to rule according to the penalty for that punishment. Because you have crossed that boundary. So even the Prophet ﷺ concerned in the family, that if they cross the boundary, then it applies to them. There's no favoritism to no one. Everyone is equal regarding those boundaries. Everyone on the same page. Then they mentioned regarding a certain thing which is haram, and we avoid those things. So with haram, the ulama mentioned the thing that is haram, that there's only one choice. Thing which is haram, only one choice, which is what? Tark. Thing which is haram, only one choice. Leave that thing. Avoid that thing. Don't touch it. One choice. Leave it. Avoid it. Nam, then you have thing which is said when you mention maskut an. Thing which is somewhat been silent. As I mentioned, rahmah, that means that that is something you have a little more leniency on those matters. Don't make things difficult. Nam. So that's something that can come to my mind. Maybe I'm wrong. That, for example, not having long nails. Nam. So the person asks so the person said, I want to cut my nail. And the person said, no, that, not the nail, sorry, something else. Hair, cutting my hair. I'm saying, leave that one, try another one. Because the nail I want to discuss concerning cutting nail would be, okay, the person, I want to cut my nail. Should I do my right hand or my left hand first? Sheikh, my right and left hand first. Start with your, so the Sheikh said, whichever hand. The person asked regarding cutting my nails. I want to cut my nails, isn't it? So should I start with my right hand or my left hand? The Sheikh said to the person, whichever. Main thing, you cut your nails. Right? Then the person said, Sheikh, but I didn't say right nor left. Whichever, so leave it to you. But the person says, no, Sheikh, Sheikh, I want, is it right because, yes, and I want you, it's, should I do my right because starting with the right is always more better. So Sheikh, okay, with your right. But the next verse about Sheikh, is it removing something which is unpleasant? So should I start with my left?
No, see.
You with me?
Yeah.
So Sheikh said, okay, mashi. Then the person asked, next question, Sheikh. If I start with my right hand, which finger should I start with? You understand? You're pushing it. You with me? So sometimes the ulama might discuss concerning it, maybe discuss with the ulama, you understand? But if said, but the person might say, but and now rahimullah, Alim Fulam said I should start with my hey. So Alim Fulan might have said in a book that had been written by Fulan that you should start if your right hand and this finger, because it's the finger of tashahud. So it's the most noble of your fingers, so start with it. With me? And they said, so the person said, so the person said, okay then, go with that. But you understand, is the person sometimes that we ask question that it leads to one thing. Where initially it's open field. There's nothing blameworthy if you start with your left hand or your right hand, but then you make things more narrow for yourself. And then the teacher might make things, the person may make things narrow for you. Because you're asking. So that's okay, you know what? I'm going to make things, I'm going to go along with you. I'm going to go along with you. Initially, he told you, Bismillah, anything. Let's cut your nail. But you want to know, is it sunnah, mustahab? The Prophet said, that they always start with his right hand. Okay, start with your right hand. The Prophet come back in, but the Sheikh, the Prophet said, what about, we think with your left hand, that is things are filled, you start with your left side. You understand? If my right and which finger first? You start to ask all these questions, then the matter became, then the answer started to become more narrow for you. Initially, it was more, you have more options. But then you start to limit your options. And that's when it said, that thing which is maskut and in the hadith didn't say which finger, cutting nails, which one to start with, this and that and. So on certain things, it can you understand, get complicated by you making it complicated. With me? So that sometimes to leave away those things. Leave away the complications. And a person might believe that the answer may be given to his questions, a list of questions that become narrow. He believes that rule applies to everyone. Then he starts to tell everyone that this is the ruling. But that because of your long list of questions. So that's sometimes to be mindful of. So no, after 7. So inshallah ta'ala, we'll end there. And then next we're going to somewhat discuss just some of the main points of the hadith and try to end next week with the next with this hadith. وَبِاللَّهِ تَعَالَى تَوْفِيقٌ وَهَادِي إِلَى السَّبِيلِ. But the shahid from the hadith that I mentioned is regarding concerning that is all those points, but more so regarding the point regarding maskut an. When things is somewhat, the sharia is silent on a matter. You understand? Don't make it complicated. So we're still recording or we stop? No, there's another case that regarding concerning that a matter where since and that as we have maybe mentioned before, a person regarding concern the matter regarding that a husband and a wife having intimacy. Of those who say the husband and wife cannot show their nakedness to each other. They take that view. You understand? So, but the others, that's not the case. That husband and wife, and the Prophet ﷺ and his wife even took bath together. Are you imagining when they took that bath together, both of them was covered? So yes, the Prophet ﷺ was known for his shyness and his modesty. You understand? But with your wife and husband, then a different rule apply. So, but because of this idea of sometimes becomes a bit of this shyness with this modesty, you understand? Then he went to a different degree. That something said that even with husband and wife, they're not allowed to display their nakedness in front of each other. Some people, that's, you understand? So it says sometimes not making things overly complicated. Not making things overly complicated. So that's inshallah ta'ala, that will end there and kind of somewhat discuss the remaining points from this hadith. وَبِاللَّهِ تَعَالَى تَوْفِيقٌ وَهَادِي إِلَى سَبِيلٍ.